Mishnama Amchon. This video is going to be the third in a series on Syriac Assyrian philosophy, the structure of understanding existence. Really, when we say philosophy, we're talking about a subset of theology. These things move together as one for us. The study of nature is the study of God. Here we're going to look at one of the foundation blocks in learning philosophy in general, in a logical way, in the classical way, in a kind of pre-modern way. And we're using a wonderful manuscript called Mingana 84. It's at the University of Birmingham's library, and you can go through it by just clicking on the link in the description. So just going through that cover page I've titled it Myth Qatra Gane. So Qatar is to bring two things together, to attach two things together. And what they mean by Myth Qatra Gane is those things that are predicated of another. So if I say, for instance, Ephraim is a man, Ephraim is being attached to man through a relationship of existence, which is to say that man is the species and Ephraim is an individual of the species. If I say Ephraim is a living thing, you have the genus of life and you're attaching to it. So in doing that, there's a presumed doubling of the Metqat Ghanutha, of the levels of attachment. Okay, that may have sounded really complicated, and we're going to get through this. And let's take a look at this manuscript just to kind of develop some kind of lay of the land here. Before getting into that, let me say this is, I would consider, deeply, deeply important for any kind of real Christianity. Christianity as that union with God, the idea of salvation, this view of seeing how the world is constructed, of understanding what reality is a it's assumed in good, solid, orthodox belief and practice. So this is not something that would be dispensable. I would put this as your first lessons, your first catechism on a serious level. Maybe not, just for someone who's just figuring out things and hasn't had any kind of spiritual vision, but certainly in the sense of proper training in the faith, that this is a foundation. If you get it wrong, everything else can get twisted. And which is why, if you look at all the classic treatments like Maraudishu's Pearl, he begins with an assumption that this understanding that we're in the midst of unpacking is something that's fully understood by the student. So let's take a look at this manuscript. Here's its cover, and inside is a cool little inscription, Shamasha Yosef et Marbishu. So that's probably Kasha Yosef Kleta, who was from Marbishu, and of course was called Shamasha Yosef at one time, perhaps when he was in Urmi. Kanun Qadim, 1900, and then, Yud, Kab, Lemet, Mim, Nun, Simget, Pe, Sade, 1886 of the Lord. And this manuscript itself, I'm not sure if it's by his hand. I don't think so. But it's probably a copy of an older manuscript. And here you have one of the works that there's tons of. It's Porphyry. And Porphyry wrote an introduction, Isagogi, to Aristotle's categories. But Syriac, the Assyrian tradition, is not Aristotelian in the way that someone might talk about the Latin or Western tradition being Aristotelian. We are Neoplatonic. So Porphyry, the guy who came up with the ideas that keep getting repeated, he didn't come up with them. He actually systematized the chain of ideas. So he worked on a guy called Plotinus. And Plotinus was very theological in the sense that there's the one, the divine, and then there's emanations from the divine. And Porphyry attached that to the more concrete and practical language of Aristotle. But we don't do Aristotelianism. We do Porphyry, which it's a form of Platonism, so it's Neoplatonic. and we're solidly Neoplatonic. As you will be able to see when you not only look at stuff like in prayers that we've done in prior videos, but also when you look at the theological vision, if you look at guys like Shimon Taibuthe, if you look at guys like Mar Ishaq, Yochanan Delyatha, all this guy, their tradition is deeply connected to this. And this is just the layout of the land. A way I'd explain that to you is, there's a certain way that somebody in our materialist age opens up a book like Genesis and goes, well, if the Bible tells me that there were 6 days, then there were 6 24-hour days, and the earth must be 5,000 something years old. Well, that's reading the story in a sense of the world of time and space being extremely real, extremely the main sense of truth being in this world. Another way you might say that is the 7 sacraments can be truly defined as. Anytime you're saying that they can be defined within the materialist vision of a human being, rather than in a contemplative way of saying, well, here's the introduction to a concept that we can't fully understand, right? We live in an age that is very much opposite to the age of faith. The age of faith sees truth as that which is eternal and exists in a world that interpenetrates ours, that shares ours, but is not our world. It's not material. Truth can never be material. It can never be limited to an area or a time. I am not truly a human being. I am a human being only by virtue of my individual existence of the species of human. The species has the truth of humanity, not me as an individual. Right? God makes human being in his image and likeness, and is perfect in how he makes outside of space and time what it means to be human, and I participate in that, and to the extent that the facts of my existence match the truth of God's will, I am truly a human being. And to the extent they're not, well, factually I am, but not really truly, right? Sometimes it's I'm more factually than truly human. And I use these words this way in kind of my own technical way. But looking at this manuscript, you see these charts. What they're doing is you can take the isagogy of Porphyry and pretty much see how he's just charting out something that Porphyry charted out in words, in Greek, of course, and then translated to Syriac. And then here the author does that in his charts. So, the division of genuses, ginsa, muthammar, genus is said. So you notice we're talking about things that are said of another. But we're going to go into this in a later video because I want to frame the ideas a little bit in English, but I just wanted you to see what a cool presentation this manuscript has of what I think is a supremely helpful way of understanding the world, especially for theology. This is an interesting page. It formed my main picture, my thumbnail. And in it, he says, Pulag al-Khamsha, 5th division, so it's the last section. Mit zi'anutha, those things that are moved. Moved by who? By the cause of movement. By the philosophical word we have for God is Allah Kul. Allah Kul means the cause of all. So the cause of all, he moves the zi'anai, those that are placed under movement, those that exist of him, right? Things that are not God. Can be divided into 2. Minna, so of her, of Mitzi'anutha, Khudrana'id, Daglila'id Hawiya. So in cycles that are revealed in the way of Nata kulla gushma Nzi'a min athra al-atra. So that which, all of it, by body is moved from place to place. Like Girilad, and this is an interesting word. I believe he's using a Persian word here. The al geta, I think, is actually what's supposed to be here. That's what makes most sense. Getig is a Middle Persia or Pahlavi word that gets picked up in Syriac. It means the material world. It's like that which has basically molecules, right? And I think the Avesta it's Gaetha, but Gamel Tau Yud He, and I believe he's coming from there because that would just really fit this Agirlid of the material as the cycle of material things. Why? Because it's saying those things that are moved from place to place. And what he means there is myself, my dog, the tomato plant growing, we're stuck where we are until we move. But an angel, for instance, is not moved from place to place. His activity moves from place to place, but he's not physically restrained. He's not in one place or another, right? And then you have minna, so that of her, of those things that are moved. Al duk tamzi'a lil gushmad hawebe, gushmad mawzalta, what and then you have here the minna trisait, the portion that is true. And I think some of these I should go into later. I sort of caught myself, realized that I haven't really developed these ideas as fully as I should yet. So let's deal with that, right? You've got those things that come from God, those things that are motions out of God, right? That are movements of God's will. The mitzai anutha, all of it together as one utha, as one abstract idea, can be those that are in the movement of time and space, let's call it, and those that are of truth. And here they talk about things like the gozelt nuhra, the element of fire, of water, the movement of life. So these are things that are always true. Oftentimes you'll hear Syriac prayers, Tertin al-Medawad, the two worlds that thou hast made. We're speaking about these two worlds, the world of truth and the world of things in space and time. Those are two worlds that coincide. We don't live in a mono universe, but a multiverse in Syriac philosophy. Yes, we live in a multiverse. That is an assumption of Syriac philosophy, and I would say the more something is assumed in a tradition, the less you can get away from it, right? So if there's a rubric in my pre-service book and it says some do this but others do that, but you should do this, that means it's just by virtue of some officialdom. It isn't an absolute. But if all the books assume alme, worlds, universes, yes, the concept of a multiverse is definitely Syriac, and the most basic multiverse is that of the world of truth, and the world of things in space and time are separate but coincident. They are interpenetrating universes, with the higher one being that of truth. And remember, this page didn't appear this way in the manuscript, lest you think that they mean to put a priority, but it's here like this. So they're parallel, but let's actually get to explaining out what we need to have some concrete concept of what I'm saying. So that's the 5 predicables. Predicable, and you even need to know this to read Syriac grammar, is like if you say Socrates is a man, as in a human being, man is predicated of Socrates. It's said of it. It's the predicate, right, in grammar? Right? Predicable would be like to say man is animal, right? In this case, animal is predicated of man. So although man is a predicate in this in one, in two, animal is the predicate. Now, in one, the pattern is going individual is predicated of a universal, right? Because man, human being, that's a universal. Have you ever seen human? No. Let's, instead of animal, make this mammal. Have you ever seen mammal, right? How tall is mammal? Where does mammal exist? You can't even tell me if mammal is in the water or or territorial on the earth. Why? Because it is a universal. But this is a universal to universal, right? A universal, man, human beings, is predicated of a universal. A universal is a universal. So this is all to just say, what is that Metqat, the thing that's qattar, that ties them together, that ties them into a knot, is these predicables. Predicables are what are a way of looking at the level of truth or fact we're talking about. So for me to say that Ephraim is 5'10", I am describing something about Ephraim as a human being or in the way that he happens to be human, right? Does it go on the level of truth or fact? Well, obviously that's a fact, right? I could have been 4'5", or I could have been 6'5", and I'd still be a human being. It's just an accident that I am part of that chart that is in the here and now, is in this room and not that room, is bound by time and space. So my truth factor is very low. That's just a fact. It's not true in the way that you would say man is in the image and likeness of God. That would be a property, right? So this is on the level of what's called an accident, or in Syriac, gidsha. Right? It just happens. It's like two cars and they hit each other. We call them a gidsha, an accident. This just happens to be when my humanity hit matter. That's how the cookie crumbled. That's that's the gidsha. That's the accident. I've got brown hair. I could have had a different color of hair, a different color of eyes, different height, and I could also have been doing this from a different place. Right? Ephraim is in his office, sitting on his oak chair on this very specific spot in the visible universe, in the lower Alma, in the lower universe. But that in the lower universe, you can be all sorts of places. It's only things in the upper universe, in the world of truth, that there's no such thing as being at an address. You're everywhere. That is possible because it's the universe of truth. But I'm stuck with the facts of my physicality. I'm very accidental, very much tied to stuff that can be changed. You could saw off my legs, all of a sudden I'm just good old 5 feet. I'd still be a human being. So let's go through and actually start defining these. Your first one is the accident, since we just did that one, or gidsha, and it's something about something, about a something that is not necessary on the level of truth, right? I've got a dog. It's a golden retriever, has blonde hair, has a certain height. It's not necessary for him to be a dog. No. Things of breed. So, the cause is always material. It always belongs to the world of time and space, to the lower world, to the lower alma. So things that are always material are like breed, DNA, let's call it environmental. So like, if my mother didn't get a certain amount of a nutrient, I might have not been as tall or whatever, or I might have had more of something. If something had happened environmentally, I could have been born with a deprivation of something which is according to my property. So a property is something on the level of what we call an adisha. And that's something about something else, about a something that is necessary on the level of truth. So it's that which lets X be part of species Y, is how I would do it. So my dog participates in dogness. His property is dogness. Right? There's a truth that is not in this world about dog. It's that which the angels and God know dog as. And it has, for that truth, for that nis, it's called the nis, there is no reason why a golden retriever can't have black hair and be 5 inches tall. It doesn't measure in inches. It's the world of that which something is by its property, its nis. Now at the lower levels, we're talking about dogs and cats of animal species. But that, Chihuahua's a dog, a Great Dane's a dog, Chihuahua and a Great Dane, right? Completely different things. But there's a dogness that they both are what they are. So that makes something what it is. This is, accident. It's that which you are by virtue that you are something. So because I'm a human being, I'm going to have some combination, and I'm a human being in the lower world. Then I have to have some kind of combination of accidents, right? I'm going to be stuck in a certain location. I'm not a spirit, and I'm going to be embodied. So that body's going to have a certain weight and certain. I have to wear something because that's something humans do. My dog just has fur, but his dogness, right? So accidents describe that which is changeable without affecting what you are. Property is that which describes what you are. So let's go up from or sideways. These two so far that we've spoken of describe something of something. They are found in something, but they are not something, right? So dogness is found in dogs, but you've never met dogness. And here this is not going with Porphyry, just not going with Classical Syriac. It's going with kind of introductory Latin philosophy, but it's not going to trip you up. Especially since I just said it. And you'll get what I mean in the next video. So they describe something of something, right? So an accident. The brown that I find in Ephraim's hair, the green that I find in the tomato in the garden, that becomes the red that I find in the tomato in the garden. Go find me some green. Don't find me a green thing, just find green for me. Go find red. Good luck. right? Find mammal. There, that's property, mammal, right? Find red. You'll point at red and say, there it is. Find me 2 meters. You'll go and find something that's 2 meters. You can't find me 2 meters. It's 2 meters is said of that which is 2 meters long, right? It's found in that, but it is not a thing, right? Neither is a property. You can't find me mammal. You can't find me dogness. You can't find me catness. You can't find me humanity. Give me the rational by itself. And then we have those that are something, though on different levels, and I would even say rather in one universe or the other. Something said, something that just is. How about that? So let's start from the bottom up. An individual. So that would be a Parsupa. And that is like Socrates, Ephraim, Phaedo, this tomato plant, what's special about the Parsupa, about the individual, is you can only talk of it, but you can't predicate of anything else other than the accident. So the lowest on this is an accident can be qatarga, can be myth. Qatargana is to accident. The only the individual, it's mitargana, it's what is said of it, can be a species, an accident, a property, anything. But it isn't qatargana of other things, right? So you can't say like a human is Socrates, because Socrates participates in, gets what he is from human. Human doesn't get it from Socrates. The individual is material, so he's very limited. He does not have truth factor. So let's also distinguish out the two that don't have truth factor. Not true. And I'm using this word in a non-technical, well, technical in the way I'm using it, a kind of pedagogical way in order to teach. An individual, not true. Right? I am not the truth of humanity. My dog is not the truth of to be a dog. He participates in it. And above that is a level of truth, the lowest level of truth. Kind of like the difference between accident and property is the species. And a species is an edsha. And sometimes the two ways I'm using edsha here are separated, like this is edshanutha or gidshe edshanaye. I've seen that, I think, in a Syriac Orthodox prayer. I have it written down somewhere. So the species, the edsha, it is what something is. It is said of a individual, right? It can't be said of an accident or property, according to which that individual, column X, is a Y of with Y-ness, I'm making that up, which is a property. Right? So Fido is a dog. There's a species because he has the property of dogness is how I know he is, but he just is. It is something you are. And above that is genus. which is ginsa. A genus is that by which many are the same. So a species is in which a whole bunch of different individuals are the same thing. So that would be like, Fido and Sharik and Rex are all dog, even though Fido and Rex are both Dobermans and Sharik is a golden retriever, right? Those are collections of accidents. A breed is a collection of accidents because it's a breed of something, right? Of that something is the species. A genus is a collection of species. So in a species, you're describing how a whole bunch of things are the same. In a genus, you're describing how different things all share a similar specific difference. And this is really what next week is going to be about, is differences. You saw those charts, they're all splits. There's differences between catness and dogness. What is it? Well, it's like describing, two different paintings different. There's a difference between properties, but there's also different. So the difference in catness and dogness, these are two different species, right? Why? Because they're two just. This species is this and that is that. Well, what if we went from, like, the idea of living thing, okay, and from there you want to go to cat. Is there anything between living thing and cat? Well, is a cat a kind of plant? No. So you could split living thing, right, into vegetative and so let's say it has senses, right? Sentient. It smells and licks, and at least like a worm, at some basic level, it's an animal, right? So what do we call things that are vegetative? Plants. So it's a genus, is plants. Why? Because plants have a specific difference that splits them out of living thing. If you have everything alive and you say, well, I need a specific difference, a difference that makes a species like difference, but it isn't going to make a species, it's going to make a genus. It's a specific difference. So you're going to say, well, of living thing, well, there's some that just grow, but they don't have sense organs. They don't have eyeballs, they don't have tongues, and there's some that do. So we're going to call it vegetative and sentient. Right? So on genuses would be plants and animals. Could you could you divide animals up into genuses? Genuses works on different levels. It can be confusing that way. How would you divide animal? Well, how about ones that milk, that feed their young with milk, and those that don't, mammals and non-mammals. See, that works. As you go further up, there's less of material reality. What distinguishes a species is materialistic. In the sense of dogness is something in the material order. Catness is in the material order. This is why, let's deal with it with human being. Let's say you want to go to, from things that exist of God. So we'll call those the moved, the motions out from God, the divine energies going out, right? Their effects, those that are moved by the divine energies, the energized, and we want to go from that to a human being. So we'll take, exists of God, and let's divide that into, how about living and non-living? Are humans going to be living or non-living? Well, that will be living. How about living? What specific difference can we put into living? Specific difference, so it's a non. that would let us split that again. Let's call it sentient, right? So that would be sentient and non-sentient. Do we have a word for sentient? Animal. Do we have a word for non-sentient? Yes, because it has to be, we're only doing with living. That's the only thing that, we've killed off the non-living. Yes, it's going to be, we started from here, from existence of God. It's going to be living. It's going to be animal or non-sentient. Let's call it plant. So humans are going to be on the animal side. Is there a way to split animal in for human? Because we don't, not like a humanness or a, we could try to do the whole monkey thing, but I think it'll be more fruitful if we go, is there a difference between humans and all other animals? Yeah, there's that rational thought, right? Whoops. What's rational thought? My favorite explanation for it is having a kid and a dog. Got the dog soon after the kid. It's a really smart dog. But I can train the dog. Every night I feed him a hot dog, and he goes crazy for it. But he'll do all sorts of tricks for it. And I can have him balance the hot dog on his nose. I could probably tell him to wait, walk away, do something for half an hour, come back, and he'll be still there staring cross-eyed at the hot dog on his nose. I can't get my kid to be consistent. And I've had 4 of them. And I've met a lot of kids. Human beings do this thing where their rational mind overtakes their non-rational, bestial self. The bestial is trainable. See, that's what I'm getting at. I can train the dog. I can't train a person, because a person works on categories. A human mind is not in this world. It belongs to the world of truth. My dog does not know mammal. He experiences physical things in this world. I know things through categories that are abstractions that are not in this world. I have truth as a human being. Truth as in, I think of things in ultimate truths, like the idea of mammal or catness, or even ethical ideas like fatherhood and motherhood that have senses of archetypal beauty and conversely ugliness about them, right? The good and evil versus just growing and decaying. There's actual moral ideas. I'm not going to go exhaust you with that. But of animal, I can make a specific difference here for a human being called rational and non-rational. Now, traditionally, human beings are a species. Always going to hear that. Human beings are a species set apart with a specific difference, rational. I disagree. I would say that because, here's my disagree. This is just that from no one else. Why am I saying it like the same? This is how I used to spell it. Should learn my name. Yeah. So, I would say that because there exists a specific difference, rational, for humans, they are a genus. Each person, let's say, supposed to being a species. Incidentally, Aquinas says this about angels. I say it about human beings because I believe that we don't create accidents like my dog does. My dog's very friendly. That's in his matter. He doesn't decide to be. He's a golden retriever. That's what they do. Dog down the street, mean dog, nice dog, good dog, a real guard dog. It's in their matter. We make decisions. It goes back to, my kid sitting there in her high chair and being untrainable, and the dog being perfectly trainable, right? I would say that how we comport ourselves, the way we live out our calling to being image and likeness of God, either results in us becoming truly human, in each of us their own species of human, with their own ness of it, right? And that's why we have saints. There's a Saint Ephraim-ness, there's a Saint Catherine-ness, there's a Saint George-ness. There's a particular character to human beings that animals don't have. There's a shocking thing that happened a few weeks ago where my wife thinks that, the dog's such a sweetheart because he's, as an individual. And then she was looking up something about, his breed's attributes and behavior, and notices that all the golden retrievers are the exact same. I'm like, yeah, because it's in their matter, right? Yet our 4 kids that are all siblings are completely different in much more radical ways. So we get to individualize ourselves, instantiate ourselves as a separate, not breed, but species of humanity, each one of us. That's my theory. It's a hypothesis. I have to see if I can bear it out, but I figured I would share it because I do think, at least on the level of introducing these concepts, it can help. There's a specific difference, rational, that belongs to genesis. And the ancients, I think, nodded to Aristotle, who had a particularly atheistic way of thinking. Thankfully, Syriac thought is not atheistic at all. It takes the opposite of Aristotle's approach. He just gets, all this honor, even as people completely Platonize his words. And good for us. Thank you. God keep you, protect you. Pushin Shana.